My bachelor's degree was in philosophy, and I was taught by Dominican friars, a Catholic religious order dating back to the 13th century. None of them were from the Dominican Republic. The philosophy department had this tradition at the end of each semester, we would drive up to a cottage or chalet in the woods. It would be the students and one of the friars as a chaperone to make sure we didn't do anything stupid. The trip was at the end of the winter semester, which was my favourite time to go since the cottage had a wood-burning fireplace. There's really nothing special about it, except that it's built on land that the Dominicans have owned since the 1800s. The parcel of land used to be much bigger, but it's been sold off over the centuries to various farmers and ranchers. Except for this forest. The cottage sits overlooking a river on one side, but the other three sides are hemmed in by thick woods. To get to it, you have to drive up a winding country road and then to this locked gate. Only the Dominicans have the key to it, so the friar chaperone will get out his car to unlock it for the rest of us. Once you get past the gate, there's an L-shaped road, with the short part of the L connected to the main country road, and the long part of it leading up to the cottage. I love this little road because it's bordered on either side with trees that lean over. It reminds me of vaulted ceilings in a church or archways. Or, now looking back, like the trees themselves are leaning over you, hunched and watching, listening. So we've done this a few times now. This is my fourth and last time up the cottage because I'm graduating this semester. I'll admit that I miss it a lot. Drunkenly arguing with philosophy students is something I never want to do again, but at the same time, I remember it fondly. We were drinking heavily when we decided it was a good idea to start walking on the frozen river. 5 of us venture out further and further from the shoreline, egging each other on, until the dumbest or bravest or most drunk of us starts running at top speed to the middle of the fucking water. We start calling out to him to come back, but he keeps going farther and farther away. We've been hearing the ice crack under our feet for a while now, so none of us dare go to there to grab him. From the shoreline behind us, we see the Dominican friar and the rest of the students gather and they start yelling at us to come back. We start our way over to them, hoping that the idiot will follow us, which, thank fuck, he did. When we get back, the chaperone was fuming. He started cursing us out in French and English, and told the rest of the students to go back inside while he dealt with us 5. He explained to us that what we did was stupid, irresponsible and dangerous, that the current was pretty fast and if we'd fallen through the ice, that would have been it. His voice got quieter as he explained that some Dominicans have drowned in the river over the centuries, that we shouldn't fuck around and that we should have known better. We head back to the cottage and take things easy. We stop drinking, and after a few hours of talking, board games and snacks, the chaperone tells us that it's light out. Time to sleep. I wake up first in the morning and decide to go for a run and down the L-shaped road. It had snowed during the night, but the morning was pretty mild. I step over still sleeping students and leave as quietly as I can. I'm dumb, but I'm not an arsehole. Drunk people deserve their sleep. I do a few laps, reaching the gate in the main road before running back to the cottage. About the 9th lap, I start getting tired and decide that the 10th one will be my last. I reach the gate for the last time and start running up the short road of the L before turning right and running up the long road. About halfway, I get the feeling that I'm being watched. I stop my run, pause my music and turn around. They were standing completely still at the end of the road. It was like an upright shadow. There were no features, no distinctions, just pitch black. I didn't feel scared, just confused and a little startled that someone might have snuck up on me while I was running. I didn't even think they were looking at me. I thought they had their back turned and their jacket hood up. That's the only explanation I had for not being able to see a face. I tried to rationalise it as someone who maybe came to birdwatch or something. Because why else would anyone be standing completely still in a forest in the middle of winter? I start walking away, looking over my shoulder from time to time. Nothing happened, but I felt like they wanted to come closer. I felt this pressure on the back of my neck increase the further I walked away. I felt the need to keep looking back at them even though it didn't move. Maybe to make sure that it was still at the end of the road and not right behind me. When I finally reached the end of the long road and I looked back for the last time. As I stare at it slowly, it starts raising its left hand. It was watching me the entire time. They hold up and they wait. I don't want to raise my hand back. I don't want to greet it, or worse, welcome it into my life. At the same time, I didn't want to piss them off by ignoring it. I decided to cross my right arm across my chest and bow my head slightly, never letting it out of sight. I figure they will understand it as, I acknowledge that you are there and I see you, but I don't want anything else to happen. I stay in the little bow and wait. After a few seconds, it slowly lowers its hand and then melts into the fucking tree line. Melts. Just fucking evaporates into the shadows of the trees around it. I let out a breath that I didn't realise I was holding in and book it to the cottage. My heart was pounding and my knees were weak. Everybody else was still asleep, so I head to the kitchen and wait for the others to wake up. I gather a few of my friends when they wake up, the guys who were with me on the frozen river, and we walk down the road. We reach the bend where I saw it and no footprints, no bookmarks. Just the ones I made on my run, which were well away from the spot it was standing on. Because I'm a lazy fuck and hugged the corner on the right to make the run a little easier and quicker. My friends joked I must have seen one of the Dominicans that drowned. So that was the day I saw the Black Dominican. This story was told by my mama many times when I was growing up. To lay a bit of foundation, my mama grew up in a little spot on the map in rural Mingo County, West Virginia, named Molan. The family was dirt poor and mama and her brothers and sisters often went hungry. The family's only close neighbour was an old lady that everyone referred to as Aunt Kate. The old woman lived alone and had what I assume was cataract because mama said her eyes were white. Aunt Kate's husband was serving time in the state penitentiary at Moundsville for murder. Anyway, due to their near constant need for food, Mama's dad planted a vegetable garden. The plot of land that they used was a good piece from the old home place where they lived. My mama said this one particular summer was very hot and that copperhead snakes were abnormally active. Because my mama loved her daddy, she reported that she would follow him everywhere. On this particular day, my great-grandfather and my mama pushed a large wooden cart to the garden and collected some of the vegetables that were ready to eat. My mama said that due to the heat and the difficulty of pushing the large wooden cart to and from the spot, that the two of them were worn out. As they neared the home place, they had to go by Aunt Kate's home, and as luck would have it, the old woman was setting out on her porch as they wheeled the cart by. As the two nearly pushed the cart by without incident, they heard the old woman holler out, "Harrison, give me some of those beans." Due to the difficulty that it took to raise, pick, and transport the vegetables, my great-grandfather replied, "We worked hard for these beans, and I'm not going to give them away." The old woman giggled and replied, "Well, you wish you did." Thinking nothing of the old woman's threat, my mama and her daddy continued on their journey and carried on the evening without thinking about what was said. That night, everyone went to bed. My mama had 6 or 7 siblings and shared a bed. Oftentimes, the older siblings would force the younger onto the floor to sleep. So this particular night, as most, my mama was on the floor to sleep. She said that as she began to fall asleep, she heard it. Something began towards her room from the hallway. Now she knew the sounds her mother and father made as they moved within the old slapboard house. Because of this, she immediately used what cover she had to pull over her head. According to her, whatever was walking continued through the hallway and into her room, and would stop where her head was laying on the floor, covered up. It would then turn after a few seconds and continue back into the hallway where it would disappear, only to return back down the hallway to where she lay. Mama said that this happened all night long. She told me that she lay there paralyzed with fear all night long. As the sun arose, whatever was walking disappeared, and she heard her daddy moving around. She stated that she immediately jumped up and ran to where her father was. Mama said that as she entered where daddy was at, he was putting on his shoes. When he saw her, the two locked eyes and she immediately knew where the thing was going when it left her room. When her daddy had finished putting on his shoes, He immediately went and put a bunch of green beans in a poke and headed out the door towards old Aunt Kate's house, Mama following after him. As they approached the old woman's house, they noticed that she was sitting out on her porch, as if waiting on something or someone. Mama said that her daddy tossed the beans up onto the porch and proclaimed, "Old woman, take your burger back." To which the old woman smiled and said, "Don't worry, Harrison, it won't bother you again." I was raised by my mama and watched her life as an example. She was a devout Christian and lived it. I never saw her drink, curse, or do anything that she thought was a sin. I was made to go to church nearly every time the doors were open. She always claimed that the story of old Aunt Kate was the truth, and I believed her. This happened about 7 years ago. I was living in an apartment with my fiance, my 2 roommates, 2 cats, and my dog, Titan. It was probably our second week in the apartment. We usually sleep around midnight. I randomly woke up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m. I started to go back to sleep and I felt rumbling near my legs. My dog was low growling. He's a large dog, a pit bull husky Rottweiler lab mix, 110 pounds. We usually leave the bedroom door cracked and held in place so Titan has free reign of the house to patrol at night if he is so inclined, and we still mostly have privacy. Just outside my door, I hear a little girl's voice say, "Come play with me." Titan keeps growling and I practically stop breathing and my heart starts racing. My girlfriend says, "Did you hear that?" I breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Oh, thank God you're awake too." We waited for a good 30 minutes and didn't hear anything before going back to sleep. Titan stopped growling after a couple minutes and laid his head back down. The next night, the same thing happened again around 3 a.m. This time, Titan immediately leaped out of bed and ran out of the bedroom snarling viciously. It never happened again. That's the only paranormal experience I've ever had, and my fiance has a couple as well. Maybe she's a ghost magnet or something. So I started dating this girl. She lives with her sister and her husband. She's a huge believer in the supernatural. I not so much even now. Wanted to move in with them and away from my parents, but I had to prove myself before I could. They were leaving to go to Mobile, Alabama for the 4th of July and had asked me to watch the dogs and keep the house clean while they were away. Before they had left for Mobile, I was laying in bed with my girlfriend watching TV and I could hear knocking in the closet. The closet is next to the bathroom, so I'm thinking it's the pipes. I chuckled and knocked back. My girlfriend looked at me stone cold and told me to never aggravate her. I didn't care and did it again. Went to bed, woke up, and went to work. Came back later, and there's a note on the table saying they'd left and there was booze in the fridge. Took the dogs out, had a few drinks, and went to bed. Later that night, I'm alone in the house with the dogs in my girlfriend's bedroom. The dogs start freaking out and wake me up, both standing in the bed facing the closet door. Now, before I went to bed, the door was closed. The door itself is hard to open because it's slightly askew and not lined up with the frame. And even I have trouble opening it. Not to mention a large dog kennel was sitting in front of the door. When I looked at the door, it was wide open. The kennel knocked over and the room is dark and quiet, besides the dogs yapping. I, being stupid, walked to the door, looked inside with a flashlight, and didn't see anything. Closed the door, picked up the kennel, and went back to bed. Woke up the next morning, and the closet's open again in the same state, but this time the bedroom door is open now too. I haven't had an experience again since then, and it's been almost 2 years. I've been having a lot of trouble sleeping recently, which I've never had before. I wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and feeling anxious with a racing heart. I told my parents, and they advised me to go to the doctors to have it checked out. I went to the doctors, and everything was fine. He said that it was just a nocturnal panic attack, and I needed to monitor my coffee intake. I did, But things didn't change. The same thing happened a few nights after seeing the doc. I woke up in a sweat, but this time with the words, "Your eyes are blue and mine are green," racing across my mind. It was really bizarre. I just assumed I was in that weird awake but sleep state. Eventually, I went back to sleep and woke up the following morning with that sentence still ingrained in my mind. I was so confused because I'd never been so fixated on something so random. It was involuntary. A few hours passed and I was back to normal. Later on that day, my dad came home from being at my neighbour's house, carrying a drawing from the neighbour's daughter, picturing both of our families together. We're close family friends. I took a closer look at it, and my heart practically fell out of my chest. She didn't have a blue or green crayon for our eyes, so she had to put a footnote saying the following: "Your eyes are blue and mine are green." Either the simulation glitched, I'm having a weird spiritual synchronistic awakening, or this is just a huge coincidence. I'm just so confused. When I was about 5, I woke up every night at about the same time, I think, and would turn my bedroom light on and then go get into bed with my parents and go to sleep. On one particular night, I woke up as I had been, turned on the light, then went and got into bed with my parents. This time, I faced the hallway where my room's light was shining, and what came out of the complete darkness, beyond the living room? A figure roughly 7 feet tall, dressed in a white hooded robe, with its hands together to where the robe sleeves came together. Also, there was just blackness where a face should have been. It was not quite walking, and not quite gliding, just coming towards me. I didn't feel malevolence, nor fear of it. However, I did freak the fuck out because there was something there that shouldn't have been. I woke my parents and my dad ran off the ghost. Also, I should point out that this happened around the time that my grandmother passed away. I don't know if that's important, but I always made that correlation. So this story is a true story that I wasn't supposed to hear or know about. But I happened to overhear it from my dad, who was telling it to our uncle over the phone. My dad has a loud talking voice, so it's not my fault I overheard. Backstory, my nightmares started around middle school. I don't remember much of the dreams, but they were creepy and kept me up most of the night, causing me difficulties during school, so my parents would have me pray nightly to help me sleep. It didn't help much, and the dreams continued until after high school, and I just started college. Most of my uncles were shamans, and from what I've heard, so was my grandpa. He passed away when my dad was a little boy, and is reborn as my baby brother. That's what I heard. Now with the story. I didn't have class that day and was walking upstairs to my bedroom until I heard my dad chatting with my uncle. At first, I thought it's the usual family calling to check up on us talk, until I heard my name get mentioned. So I sit in my younger brother's room to listen. My brothers were at school. My dad says to our uncle, "Yes, Dragon Crystal isn't having any more nightmares for a while now, and we're happy about it." Uncle: "Well, what was the cause of the dreams?" My dad tells him that apparently I had a brother that still clings to me from the afterlife and wanted to cross over to reunite with me. But if he did, it would poorly affect our family, so our other uncle, a shaman, spoke with my supposed brother and told him to let go of me so that I can rest at night. I heard my uncle ask if I knew about this, and my dad responded with, "No, it's best if she never found out about it, or it would have turned out bad." Well, I found out about it, Dad, but I'm just pretending not to know about it. I'm sure if I ask about it, my dad will flip out and make a scene about it. Because he always makes a scene about anything that he wants to rant about. So even now, I still don't know why my ghost younger brother couldn't cross over, since my dad changed the topic and started talking about hunting instead. Experience number 1. Backstory: he used to hunt with a hunting rifle, but has now started alternating between crossbow and a bow, because it's quieter and easier to hunt than with a hunting rifle. My dad, like I mentioned, was out hunting, and I'm assuming had fallen asleep in his car, while waiting for a book to appear. He looks out the window and sees this prize-winning book, his words, not mine, a couple feet away from him. Excited, he raises his gun, all set fire at it. Because our other uncles have already gotten their prize book, expect him and he wanted to get one himself. But when he looks through the scope, there's nothing there. He lowers the gun and there's the book in plain sight. He raises the gun again to fire. Zip, nothing, open space. Lowers the gun again. The book is still there, but looking away from my dad. Very confused, he raises the gun up again. Gone again. My dad's thinking, what's going on? He lowers the gun this time and the book is really gone. He was so confused, and by then my uncles have returned to the car and they head home for the night. Nobody was able to figure out if the book was real, a figment of my dad's imagination, or a forest spirit playing a prank on him. Experience number 2. My dad was out hunting again with one other uncle at this newer area about 3 or 4 years ago, instead of at the area in Experience 1. Except it was almost winter when this strange and creepy encounter happened. My dad was already high up in his tree stand for hours and just waiting for a book to appear. It does, but it's too far out of range that he wouldn't be able to get a clear shot. When he notices a woman in a white dress walking around a few feet below him. He was confused why she was walking around in a dress in that condition and wanted to call out to her, but something in the back of his mind told him not to. So he just silently sat in the tree stand and waited. Eventually she walked away and out of sight, in the direction of where our uncle was located. My dad continues waiting for maybe another half an hour before climbing down and calling our uncle about the woman in the white dress. Our uncle, what woman? The one that walked in your direction half an hour ago. I never saw anyone, and there shouldn't be anyone else but us here. They were both confused, but it was enough to scare our uncle into wanting to get the heck out of there. My dad didn't want to leave and instead wanted to stay a bit longer. After some convincing, our uncle talks my dad into leaving. When my dad processes to mock and tease him about the woman in the white dress, they both made it home perfectly fine. But our uncle is too scared to go hunting there by himself now, after what happened. Then a few days afterwards, my dad's leg just starts hurting and swelling up for a couple of weeks. Our other uncle, who's a shaman, not a hunter, thinks maybe they offended or disturbed something while out hunting. My dad denies it, but was told to go back to the area during the day and apologise to whatever they might have disturbed. My dad, being a stubborn guy, refused to, but after a while, he and our uncle, the one who went hunting with him, went back and apologised. A few days after his leg was all better, as though nothing had ever happened. Creepy, and that's why I never want to go out hunting in the woods at night. Because anything can happen, and I hate being outside after dark. So around noon, I was making drinks for our guest, and normally I can carry a tray of 4 or 5 drinks perfectly fine. But when I picked up the tray this time, the whole tray just slipped over and the drinks, luckily it was just water or it would have been a sticky mess, spilled all over the floor. My co-worker that's working with me and the hosts that placed the order for the drinks came to check on me in case I fell because they heard the cups falling down. I helped maintenance sweep the water and ice down the drain before someone else takes a tumble. But I swear I felt a tug on my arm before the tray fell down. At least I've got co-workers who are caring and came to check on me in case I did get hurt. Weird thing is that this isn't the first time I've had this happen to me while I'm at work. The first time was at my very first job back in 2012, around the time Halloween while I was working the night shift at this Asian grocery store. I was one of the few open lanes and it was very, very slow, so I had my drawer open so I could count how much money was in my drawer. There's a soda cooler just to the left of me, and I had a clear view of anyone coming up on my lane. As I was in the middle of counting my coins, I see a small boy peeking at me from in front of the cooler out the corner of my eye. So I close my drawer and turn to help him. And my lane is completely empty. I walk out and look around, a bit confused, since I didn't hear footsteps coming or going from nearby. So I go back to my register, reopen my drawer to resume counting, and just as I start counting, I see the kid again staring at me, as if he needed help with something. I wait a bit before I look up, and when I turn my full attention, he's gone again. Then I heard footsteps coming from behind me. I turn to see a co-worker walking by and ask if he saw a kid run by. He tells me that he hasn't seen anyone walk by in either direction, which really confused me because I saw the boy twice out the corner of my eyes. Twice I looked up and he wasn't there. I tell my co-worker I'm positive that I saw a kid looking at me while I had my drawer open, but he thinks I just saw the Halloween decorations stuck on the cooler that looked like a kid staring at me. Backstory: my grandpa from my dad's side of the family passed away when he was just a kid, so I've never gotten the chance to meet him. I've only ever heard stories about him. But it's tradition for us to call our parents relatives, our grandparents, even though technically they're not, and it confuses me and my siblings all the time, but I'll stick to it. I overheard him talking this to our grandma a few days ago. Our dad has a very loud voice and we could hear him talking through the walls very easily. But due to this encounter, he hasn't been going hunting for a couple of weeks now. Only time he goes is just to check his trail cams. He was out hunting on private property that belonged to our relatives. They gave him permission to hunt there. Our grandpa, my dad's uncle, had built a treehouse-like stand above one of his pigeon pans. He allows our dad to use it because the temperature was dropping, so our dad started using it. Normally my dad leaves the hatch open to let in some light, because our grandpa has a small lamp attached to his pigeon pan that he leaves on at night to keep the pigeons warm during the cold night. During one of the nights my dad was out there hunting, it was around midnight. He had closed the hatch because it was too cold. The entire hut was pitch black and the only sound was the wind and occasionally the pigeons flutting around in their pan. When there was a sudden knock on the hatch, it confused our dad a bit because he knew our grandpa wasn't awake at the time, and if he was awake, he wouldn't come near because he would have seen our dad's car parked a few feet away and know our dad is there. Also knowing that if he did come, he'd scare away the deers grazing near the area. Our dad tells whoever it is to leave him alone and that he isn't doing anything wrong because he was given permission to hunt there. After saying that, the knocking stops. Then he hears what sounded like someone walking around nearby. He waits a few minutes for the sound to stop before opening the hatch to see who was walking, only to not see anyone or anything down below. After a few more hours of waiting and no deers appearing, my dad decided to climb down from our grandpa's tree hut to take a short nap in his car and to warm up. But not long after, he falls asleep. He hears a knocking on his window as if someone was there. He wakes up and looks around in case our grandma woke up early and saw him sleeping in his car. Nobody in sight, and so he checks his phone to see it's about 4:30 or 5 a.m. And our grandparents' house that's just past where his car's parked is still dark, meaning they aren't awake yet. Confused, our dad goes back to the tree hut for a few more minutes before heading off to work at 6 a.m. After a few minutes of nothingness, he heads to work and after work goes straight back to there to do some more hunting. This time, our grandparents were doing something outside, except they were over at their house and invited our dad to have dinner with them before he started hunting, which he accepted, then back up into the tree hut he went. Around the same time, the knocking started again. He again proclaimed he was given permission to hunt there and wasn't doing anything wrong. Again, the knocking stops and our dad thought it was over. Then suddenly the knocking starts up right next to the wall where he's sitting at. Our dad claims that time the knocking was so hard, it caused the entire hut to start shaking. So he just sat there quietly and didn't make a sound or move an inch. Eventually, the knocking stopped and our dad quickly got out of the hut, into his car and left for the night. On the way home, he called our other relatives that practice shamanism and explained everything to them. They checked and told him that it was a friendly spirit, telling him that he didn't want our dad to be hunting there alone anymore. It was okay with him checking his trail cams and hunting during the day, just not at night anymore. After we finished telling our grandma, she believes it's his father, our husband, aka our real grandpa we never met, reaching out to him to be careful, and that he's watching over our dad for going hunting alone instead of with our uncles. Our dad then tells her, since that incident happened in the tree hut, He's actually too afraid to go back there. He's willing to go and check his trail cams before dark, but not willing to hunt anymore. He then briefly mentions a couple days after the incident happened that he was home in the middle of showering. My brothers were playing video games upstairs and I was watching YouTube videos on the couch in the living room when he heard a sharp knocking on the bathroom door. Our dad turns off the shower and opens the door, believing it was one of us knocking on the door to ask who knocked on the door. We all looked at him confusedly and claimed to have not have moved from our spots. He closes the door and starts showering again. We go back to what we were doing, only to hear him say sort of muffledly, "Come do it again." Only nothing happened, and he later told our mum when she was gone home from work. Was it really our deceased grandpa? Maybe. Will our parents tell us if it is? No, probably not, because they know we'll get scared by it and it might affect us mentally. Backstory. This happened several years ago before we moved to our current house, and none of us knew about this large sum of money our grandma was storing away. But needless to say, our dad blamed it on me and my younger sister, even though we both told him we never knew it was there. So I've held off on telling the story because it's very much still a mystery on truly what happened. Especially since I wasn't home when our grandma and parents first realised it happened. I believe I was staying after school for a club I was part of, or needed extra homework help. Can't remember exactly. But nonetheless, I still took the fall for it despite not even realising it was just hanging a couple feet above my own portable bank container. So, because if any argument, cough, guilt-tripping cough, that involves me and my dad, will use this as an example to point fingers at me. My grandma basically raised me since I was born, because my parents were still in high school around the time I was born. So I respect her a lot, even though she's now started becoming very toxic and entitled. She's always helped keep my loose cash hidden and away from prying eyes, because I don't have my own personal bank account at the time. The location of my portable bank was in the back of her closet stashed, among her sewing items. The rare times where our parents would give us any allowance. Me, $5 or if I'm lucky, $10. Younger sister, 10, maybe 15. Brothers and baby sister, 20 or more. Secretly, my grandma would sneak maybe an extra $10 into my bank because she believed it was at the time unfair that I only got $5, while everyone else got more. Whatever, I rarely spend it on anything just yet, and I just started high school at the time, but that's a separate story. I was sitting there when my phone, my dad's old flip phone, vibrates in my pocket. I check it and it's my mom asking about my grandma's now missing money. Apparently, when our grandma found out her cash went missing, our dad searched her closet and found my hidden portable bank. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. They didn't buy it because if my portable bank was in there, that meant I knew about the money. In other words, I'm the guilty suspect. I dreaded going home because I'm about to get a major earful for something I clearly couldn't have committed while at school. Eventually I got home and our parents were already at the front door prepared to question me about the money, as they were demanding me to just hand over the cash. And I'm just repeatedly trying to explain that I didn't take the money. They'll question why my bank was in the closet as well as why do I have so much cash in my bank. It was barely $200 in there. My grandma had over $1,000 that was stolen. When our grandma was about to mention that she's seen our younger sister stealing money from my bank, because our younger sister found out where my bank was and has been stealing my money for a while, before my grandma decided to intervene. So now the target is both me and our sister. Our dad spent the next 4 to 6 hours just interrogating us to admit that we stole the money and split it between the two of us. Our grandma then pointed out that the main pouch where the large majority of her cash was opened and taken, but the smaller pouch wasn't touched or disturbed in any way. Our dad, being a stubborn man he is, refused to believe that either me or our sister took and kept yelling at us to hand the cash over or get disowned. I then asked him how could I have stolen the cash if I wasn't home all day, and if I was home already, I'd have been in my room focusing on my homework instead. Which led to our dad becoming more enraged. Then after more hours of him yelling at us, our grandma started blaming it on her deceased mother and sisters, whom has been known to haunt her every chance they get along, before they even moved to Minnesota. My grandma eventually started yelling threats to her sister and mother, by saying, "So after all these years now, you decide to pull this crap again? Why are you suddenly not doing anything more? Go ahead and show yourself." To this day, our dad still wants to point the finger at me, accusing me of taking the money, and will use this as any excuse to get pissed at me. Backstory. My grandma always mentioned that her mother and sister had passed away when she was very young, so I've never seen a single picture of them and only heard stories about them haunting her. Story number 1: Midnight Garden Plot Haunting. Our grandma, uncle, aunt 1, 2, one is older and 2 is younger, but I never physically met 2, only seen pictures, and heard her voice over the phone. Along with Dad, were at their plot of garden they've owned for a few years and had been ploughing it all day. Aunt 1 noticed that it was getting dark and suggested that they head home for the night. Grandma refuses and tells them that it'll be too late by the time they get home and to just spend the night there instead. So they plough some more before eating dinner and getting ready for bed in their small garden hut they made when they brought the plot of land. They'd just started to fall asleep when they heard frightened laughter all around the hut and scampering above their heads, as if whatever was outside had climbed up on the roof. Note, this is Lao, and it's not the first time it happened to my grandma. Aunt 2 is freaked out and crying now, wanting to go home. After a while, the noise stops, and Aunt 1 asks if Grandma wants her to check outside, which Grandma promptly says, "No, go back to sleep. I'll light a small fire near the doorway in case someone tries to get in." So Aunt 1 goes back to sleep, and Grandma lights the fire. The rest of the night was quiet after that, and in the morning, fellow things were scattered about, but Grandma ignored it and had everyone finish ploughing before they headed home. Mystery 2. Mystery voices on the trail. Grandma and Aunt 1 were finishing checking things at their garden land again, but as they were ploughing the last bit of land, Aunt 1 hears men's voices and women as if walking in their direction. She mentions it to Grandma, who stops to listen, and just tells her to quickly finish ploughing in case it was Vietnam soldiers heading their way. Just as they finish, they also notice the voices had stopped too. Slightly nervous now, Grandma quickly grabs her things, handing Aunt 1 the lighter items while she handled the heavier ones and starts heading home immediately. Suddenly, the voices now start up again, this time behind them. Aunt 1 asks how the voices were behind them if nobody passed them. Grandma just shushed her and said to quickly get going. As they were leaving the area, they passed by an old tombstone on the side of the road, which Grandma was mentioned many times in her other stories, but didn't know who it belongs to. Story 3. Poltergeist Figure. Again, Grandma, Aunt 1, 2, Dad and Uncle were at the garden. Except this time they had finished early and had just finished eating lunch when Grandma decided to go to her aunt to have a chat, leaving Aunt 1 in charge of 2, Dad and Uncle back at their plot. Not long after Grandma got to her aunt's plot to start chatting, when they hear horrified screams of terror, followed by rapid footsteps of Aunt 1, 2, Dad and Uncle coming in their direction. As soon as they see Grandma, they clutch her tightly and trembling with fear. Grandma not happy about this and angrily asks them, "I told you all to stay at the hut so that nobody takes our pots and dishes." Dad, "Well, we heard something rustling in the bushes and laughter as soon as you left." Because of this, everyone, including our Grandma's aunt, went back to their hut to make sure nothing was stolen or out of place. Sure enough, their pot that held the rice was missing. Grandma, "Just great, the Vietnam soldiers probably stole our pot when you guys took off running." To be honest, I'd run too. Story for another time. After a couple minutes of searching around the hut, they find the pot a couple yards behind the hut in the grain field. Rice was still in there untouched. Grandma now realizes who could have moved it, picks up the pot and loudly explains in an angry tone, "Oh, you're that hungry, aren't you? If you're so hungry, take the food then. And don't bother my kids. You're mad because you're gone and not me, so terrorize me. Only leave my kids alone, you hear me?" Before dumping the last of the rice onto the ground and storming back to where everyone else was waiting. That night, they slept at Grandma's aunt's hut instead of at their own. When they went back, everything was still the way it was.